We are here in Northern Ireland at the Game of Thrones studio. We're working with the game Game of Thrones Legends to forge a pair of unique in-game items that I'll then show off on the Game of Thrones Legends talk show. So earlier this year, we were contacted by Zynga and Game of Thrones Legends, the mobile game, to do some type of promotion with them, where we joined several other influencers on a Game of Thrones Legends talk show. We weren't entirely sure what it was, but as we talked with them more, we realized what they wanted us to do was to come to Ireland and film at the Game of Thrones studios, where the actual show was filmed. Much of it was filmed there, and many of the props and a lot of the weapons, which of course is important to Man-at-Arms, were in place. So we hopped on a plane, flew to Dublin, and picked up a car and drove to Belfast where we were staying so that we could have access directly to the studios. So on that drive that we took from Dublin to Belfast, which I guess was maybe a couple of hours, it is exactly what you'd expect when you see shots of Ireland. Green and, cows and sheep, just a beautiful drive through. Was really kind of struck by how wonderful the countryside was, rolling, nothing super flat, and really had a great time. Absolutely beautiful country, and I'm definitely looking forward to coming back. We scheduled in a couple of days in Dublin before we came home, and the place that we were staying, while a pretty new hotel, was in an older portion of the seaport area, and that was really fascinating because the weather change was really wild. We could watch and see, just like any time you're near the sea, you can see clouds rolling in. We got to spend a little bit of time on the street walking around. And much like where we were staying, where you would see the new being built on the old, as we're moving around restaurants and shops and things like that, you'd see the older facades with maybe some new construction right next to some of the really older buildings. We really did have kind of perfect weather the entire time, and it was funny because we would have conversations with people who were living there, and they would tell us that it's really not always like that we had come kind of in the perfect time of the year. I think that we were probably about 70 degrees Fahrenheit every day with upper 50s at night, so really delightful weather to be out and about. We also had a pretty quick visit over to the National Gallery of Ireland. That was pretty amazing. The things that we were used to only seeing in books or, maybe on television right there in front of your face. While you can visit museums here in America, the feeling of age and the information that's coming to you that was only research in the past was really wonderful to have that kind of presented right in your face. So I thought Dublin was very a very vital city, felt like it was really alive, and was really a great experience. So once we were settled in, we took an entire evening to go over to the studio with the rest of the crew and kind of sit down and have a meet and greet, because even though some of these people we talked to online, they're not people we've met in person before. And so we had a big sit down and kind of all told each other about ourselves. And then we had access to the studio, really sole access, so there was no one else there. The studios were closed. And we were able to go through and look at all the individual sets and, the backgrounds, and, some of the things that were amazing were, as you looked at some of the clothing, a lot of TV and movie stuff can be, kind of movie magic. And what these were, they were beautifully created items, both from the books that had, fantastic handwork over the surfaces and gold leaf, and the clothing that was hand stitched with, there were dresses where the entire surface of the dress was hand stitched with feathers on the surface. The brass chainmail suits, which, today you would think maybe they're plastic, maybe they're plated. No, they were metal. And, looking at some of Joffrey's armor, where you see the copper plates on the outside with all the engravings, they were copper with engravings. They were not plastic. The stuff was real, and I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But of course, one of the things that was staged there that I really liked was the workshops, where they were making the weapons. So there were a bunch of the different weapons that we've seen completed in the show in pieces all over the place. So there were molds and separate blades and separate handle sections. And, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like you really can't see anywhere else. And the fact that there weren't a whole bunch of tourists there at the same time made quite a difference for us, because it allowed us to get up close and personal with pretty much everything there. Of course, when you come into the actual sets, the throne room, the destroyed throne room was pretty amazing. It was one of those things where we went in, and that was always a big kind of dark space because we had the lighting changed to be doing other types of filming. And so the presence of the actual throne was very cool. And we moved through, and there were the skulls that you would see from the dragons in full size, kind of scattered around. There were certain areas where there were multiple, but thought that was really, really neat. It was just kind of everything that you saw from all the seasons, and it made sense. And then it allowed us to kind of think through how those things were shown in the game as well, which I thought was pretty fascinating as we began to play the game more and more to get a feel for it for ourselves. So some of the things that we were able to get up close and personal with and really get a feel for were super cool, because they're things that we've made. So Oathkeeper and Longclaw and Needle. Not only was it fascinating comparing the versions of the weapons we made to the original ones from Game of Thrones, but to then see them featured and used in Game of Thrones Legends was really special. One of the other things that was really cool was there were some weapons in there that I'm sure were shown on screen, but were not things that I had caught with my eye. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Plus they had the bulk swords that you would see all the different guardsmen and different people like that using. So that was something that we could see exactly what that type of construction was, and how they had all the molds there for the ones. So they would have a metal one, and then they would have molds made for the rubber ones that were used for the combat. And, it was really quite fascinating. So one of the neat things with working with so many people was, even though we had a separate production team, which was from Germany, Deerstalker Pictures were the hosts for the show. So they hosted multiple different things, including the game show that we were involved in. And it was really a pretty fascinating time, because they came all the way from Australia to do that. So we were thinking we were from a long way away, but obviously they had traveled even farther than we had. And so they were up to snuff. They knew what they were going to ask us and had a good feel for how to keep the ball rolling the whole time. It was unusual for me to be the person who was just responding kind of to them as they would prompt us for new questions or part of the game show, or the other things that we were doing there. Then we were able to actually meet all the rest of the influencers that we were going to be working on the game show with. And so that was Film Theorists, How to Beat, and Screen Crush. Those guys were really a blast, but it was also really cool that they were able to have their crew there with them as well. So just like I had Brendan Kennedy, my producer, and Mahendra, who was our director of photography, we had our guys there, they had all their guys there, and we could really sit down and talk about how we deal with different things with YouTube and production and branding, and everybody does it a little bit differently, and we all have different tricks. So it was really great to sit and spend some time with those guys talking and get a feel for how they do the same things that we do and how they approach it. So the actual filming day was one long day. I think we were in studio for about 15 hours. Obviously the cameras weren't always on the same place, so there were times that we had a break in between. But, we didn't really know what we were getting into. We knew there was going to be some hosts and there was going to be some conversations, but then it shows up with a set of buzzers with big X's on the front like a game show. So they started asking us questions, and we had time, and we had to answer pretty quickly. And so that was definitely pretty challenging. There's sections where, I feel like I'm right on the money and I got the answers that nobody expects. And then there's times I just sit there and I was like, I don't even know what they just asked me.
Do you want it again?
Yes. One of the other things that was going on concurrently, because it took pretty much all day to get it done, is Soylent Cosplay was there, and she was basically taking two people and transforming them. One, transforming one of the hosts into Jon Snow from Game of Thrones Legends, and then the other was into a White Walker from Game of Thrones Legends as well. I gotta tell you that guy looked absolutely fantastic. His makeup super cool, and of course we got to see him about halfway through at lunch. He came in and he had to eat. Obviously, he had to be very careful with all the makeup that he had on. But we've got some really fun pictures of him, drinking tea with a mug and sitting around with the rest of the crew, looking very scary, to be quite honest. If it's something you remembered from the show. So I thought that was really fascinating, and by the end of the day, I thought he looked great. So we do have something exciting coming for you on the Almi channel in the next couple of days. We'll have several brand new Almi Artist episodes where we forge two of the in-game items from Game of Thrones Legends, the Slender Dagger and the Chain Belt. In the meantime, be sure to watch the Game of Thrones Legends talk show on Deerstalker Pictures channel and YouTube live section, where you'll see exclusive footage from the new episode. Check the description for the date and time of the live stream. I hope to see you there. And if you haven't already, be sure to download Game of Thrones Legends today and you'll receive 50 gold, 3,000 food, and a daily summon token to help you begin your Westeros adventure.
Click here to subscribe, or click here to subscribe to Baltimore Knife and Sword. Click the video to see more here on the Almi channel.